Hello, it's Dougal from Crown Cellars. I hope you're all safe and well. One of the trends we've noticed in the off-trade wine market during lockdown is that people are more willing than ever to spend a little bit more to get a better quality wine, a slightly more premium wine. But not only that, a lot more people are starting going to independent wine merchants to look for wines, partly due to availability. But as a result of that, many people have been a lot more open to taking recommendations for wines that they've never had before. So they may have heard of it, but they've never tried it, but then they end up buying a bottle, really liking it, and then that becomes a wine that they will look to repurchase. But also wines that they maybe never have heard of before that they're recommended, and they take them away and enjoy them, and then again want to repurchase them later. So when you look at all those trends together, I think it's highly likely that many people will take that change in increase in budget and that mindset of trying better wines, more premium wines, and maybe even a bit more adventurous into the on-trade once it reopens. So I think that means that it's going to be more important than ever for pubs, restaurants, and all on-trade outlets who have a wine list to make sure they have a range that has enough premium wines on there to satisfy their own customer base. And then also you think of the social distancing aspect once reopening happens. So it's going to be more important than ever to have a higher average spend where possible for every person that comes through the door, because the throughput just won't be the same as before. So I think premium wines can certainly help with that aspect. So it's a win-win, so that the customer will get a better quality wine available to them, and then the business owner will be able to increase average spend accordingly by selling more premium wines. So with all that in mind, I've selected a couple of wines from our Crown Cellars range that I think would make a really good addition to a wine list based on those principles. So wines that are slightly higher quality without going overboard, so not mega expensive, but pay a little bit more, get a wine that's a bit more interesting, a bit more diverse, a bit better quality than maybe sort of standard entry level wines. So I've picked out these two wines. So they're both under the Finca de Oro label, and they're both from Rioja in Spain. So the Finca de Oro label is our own exclusive label to Crown Cellars, and it's exclusive to the on-trade. So let me talk about the white first. So I guess when you mention the name Rioja to many people, that their first thoughts are of red wine, and that's perfectly understandable because for many years red wine dominated the UK market in terms of wines from Rioja. But of course, those in the know always knew that they make some fantastic white and rosé wines as well. And we certainly notice, even before lockdown, for the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen certainly an uptick in white Rioja sales. So it's a trend that was there, I think, before the lockdown, but I think it'll only continue as a result of it. So it's a good one to consider, I think. Now, the interesting thing about this wine, apart from the fact that it's on-trade exclusive, etc., is the grape varieties that go into making the wine. So you've got two here. So you've got Viura, which is the classic white grape variety used in Rioja, which is traditionally most white Riojas would just be made from Viura. But you can see from the label here that this one also has Sauvignon Blanc written on the label, which is a more familiar name to most people, a more familiar grape variety. So the majority of the blend is Viura, and then there's a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc wine blended in here. So what's happening here is the Viura will give some lovely, sort of bright citrus fruit, bit of melon character as the backbone of the wine, and then the addition of the Sauvignon Blanc will give the wine a little bit more acidity, because Sauvignon Blanc's a naturally high acid wine, so that will make the wine even fresher and crisper, and also add a bit of sort of double down on those citrus characters, and also add a bit of herbaceousness to the wine as well. So it's adding a bit of complexity, but also a bit of extra structural components in the acidity. So what does all that add up to? Well, at the end of the day, with that blend in place, you get a dry, crisp, citrusy wine that's fairly light, fantastic to drink on its own, so great as an aperitif. However, it's a fabulous food wine as well, so it will go really well with lighter things like salads, but then things like grilled vegetables, tapas, of course. Fish tapas would be fantastic, garlic prawns and all sorts of things. So really versatile wine, and a really interesting wine to introduce to people, and not so scary in that it's got a familiar grape variety on the label. So the way to upsell it might be someone who is normally a drinker of, say, Chilean Sauvignon Blanc entry level, and then because this has got Sauvignon in it, you can introduce this to them as a something a bit different, and more premium for them to try and enjoy. And I think most people who normally drink Chilean Sauvignon would try this and really enjoy it, and hopefully come back and buy it on other occasions. So moving on to the red, so probably more familiar territory for a lot of people in that it's a red Rioja, which is the majority of production in Rioja is red wine. Now the classic grape variety for Rioja, for those of you in the know, is Tempranillo, and this wine is a 100% Tempranillo wine. So that's the grape variety used to make it. So Tempranillo, typically you get some nice sort of red fruit character, so a bit of plum, bit of raspberry character, bit of blackberry. So you get all of that. It's quite a modern style Rioja, so it's quite ripe, so there's plenty of fruit there. But then the other interesting thing about this is that it spends 4 months in oak barrels, so you get all that oak character added to the wine, so things like cedar character, cedar aromas, spice aromas, touch of vanilla character from the oak. But the other thing that barrel aging does is to soften out the tannins in the wine, because oak barrels aren't airtight, so there's small amounts of oxygen get in there and then soften out the tannins in the wine. The tannins are the element of red wine that gives the wine structure. So it's the thing that gives you that drying effect in your mouth. So it attaches itself to the saliva in your mouth and sort of dries it out, but it gives the wine structure. So by softening the tannins, it's not quite as astringent as if it didn't have the barrel aging, so it's a bit softer in style. So again, adding all that up, you get a really fruit driven modern style Rioja with hints of oak, but it's nice and soft, medium bodied, and fairly easy drinking, so you can enjoy it on its own without any problems, but great with food again. So the classic match would be lamb is great with Rioja, but tapas again because of the country it comes from and the area it comes from, and sauces that have a tomato base would be fantastic with it. So there's a lot of possible matches when you think about this wine and food. So that was just to introduce a couple of wines that I think would capitalise on these trends that we're seeing. So thank you very much, take care, and I'll speak to you soon.